In this video, I want to talk about the IKinema runtime indie for Unreal Engine 4. You can find that at www.ikinema.com and click this link down here. And if you accept the terms, you can get a trial for 14 days, or you can pay £99 plus taxes and get access to this plugin. So in this video I'm going to demonstrate a little bit about what we can achieve with this plugin. If you have no idea what it is, I suggest you go check out the description. It is basically a full body IK solver which can be used inside Unreal Engine. And if we jump into the example map I have loaded here, it's just a pretty standard third person template as usual. I just placed a little ramp here we can run up on, and I also modified it a little bit so we can walk and hold down a key to run. So that's all the changes I made prior to this video. In case you're also interested in how I did that, it's just straightforward, adding an interaction run key mapped to some key inside my project settings. Yeah, and just changing the walk speed. Since the default animation blueprint not this one, the blend space here comes with some different values, so that means you need to set the speed 600 and x-axis division to 3, and then position this as at 2 to get this exact same result as I have. Okay, but on with the plugin. So if we start off by taking a look at what we want to achieve first. So what I want to get out of this is to get my character to stand on the correct location on the stairs here, for example, and be positioned with the feet planted solid on the ground when walking out ledge like this. And also, for example, if I'm standing on some uneven terrain like this, also to have the feet have contact with the floor. And that's actually something which the IKinema plugin excels in. All it takes is a little bit of tinkering, and that's what I'm going to show you in this video. So before I go into how we set that up, we should also take a look at the animation, because the animation for the third person third person example has a little hiccup. So that's worth noting when we evaluate the quality of the end result, because if your animation doesn't have a good quality, then obviously the IK solver isn't gonna be able to fix it for you. It works off the animation, and yeah, if your animation quality is bad, like in this example, then the end result is gonna be accordingly. So actually the run animation is pretty smooth, I think, so we can mainly look at that. So to begin with, we need to create something called a rig, and you can find that under animation, IKinema rig. If you don't have this one, you probably didn't install the plugin correctly. I won't be covering that, since the instructions when you get your download package is going to cover that. So I assume that you have figured out that so far. So you select your skeleton. In this case, this is my third person skeleton, and it's going to complain something about too many bones or something. Just something that we can ignore for now. So the reason it's complaining is that it's expecting a little less bones, and as far as I understand, the hands or the finger bones and the twist bones are not needed in the solver, so we can start off when we come in here and get rid of them. So just select from the index finger down to the twist bones and delete them. And the same goes for the twists joints here. Just get rid of those, and also all the IK joints. So it's going to leave you with this standard setup if you're using the UE4 standard skeleton with the pelvis as a root inside the IKinema rig. And yeah, I think it's 22 bones in total. So this editor might seem a little bit familiar if you have been inside the FAT editor. It's very similar to the FAT editor. So inside the hierarchy here, you can select to view the constraints, which is basically a list of all your tasks. And tasks are what tells the IK solver what to follow. Hope that made sense. So if you, in this case, since we want to do something with the feet, then we need to add a task to the feet. And since the feet consist of 2 joints in this case here, and we need to orient the foot to the supporting ground, we need to add a task for both the foot joint, which is actually the ankle, and also the ball, which is out here. So you do that by right-clicking on one of the joints, and you can actually select add a dual task or position or orientation, but I haven't used these 3 down here. I mainly used all the presets here. So under constraint type, you will add a foot task for the foot and also a foot task for the ball. You do that for the other foot, like that. Okay, so that is technically gonna be what is necessary to get started. It's gonna show up a little bit weird, but I'm gonna take things step by step and change it so it becomes what we want it to be. Okay. So the next step is to go into your animation blueprint, and you have the default third-person example. You will have the default state machine, just a simple idle run jump stuff, and you want to insert foot. Type in foot, and then you get access to this IKinema foot placement node, and you want to connect that in between this default state machine and the final animation pose. In order to get things to work, you need to specify the hip transform. So you need to tell IKinema, the IKinema plugin, where your hip bone is, and that's going to be the pelvis. We also need to specify which limbs we want to transform, and that's going to be the 4 bones that we added. So in this case, this is a specific node for foot placement, but it does some other stuff as well. I'm not going to talk about that in this video, but if we scroll down, we can find the foot L and the ball L and the foot right and the ball right. So with that said, we can actually go up here and refresh this, and that's gonna expose a lot of new nodes in here. So what I like to do here, instead of having it all here, is to go in here and say the mesh offset. The mesh offset is an offset we can offset each of these limbs from the ground. in case your foot needs to be offset. I'm gonna show that in a little bit, but I like to take this off so it disappears from up here, and also the same for the alpha, so this node becomes a little bit less messy. So for the alpha, this needs to be set to 1 for all of these, which means that the IK solver is going to work for fully for these joints. So the order of these corresponding to the order up here. Also, one thing to note when clicking this IK node, IKinema foot placement behavior node, is that it has a pretty intimidating list of properties that you can tweak on. But after looking into how things work, a lot of them are actually corresponding to a lot of the stuff we have inside the IKinema rig. So it's not that bad after all. Okay, so the last thing we need to do to get this run the test is to set the reverse foot setup. And by checking this one, it's gonna use internal logic to figure out where the bottom of the character is. And if you also want to set this reverse foot factor to 1, which as far as I understand, is a way to tell whether that this should be the foot positioning should be working or not. So it's kind of like an alpha value. So for now, you just want to keep this one on and keep this one to 1. If you turn this off, as far as I understand, it's gonna be using the bottom of your collision capsule to figure out where the bottom of your character is. Otherwise, it's gonna use some other kind of logic, internal logic, which I'm not fully aware of how it works. So anyway, this is the first basic setup, so we can run a first test with this. So let's go ahead and play. So initially when we start walking, you might notice that he's looking a little bit odd, and he's gonna adjust eventually. And there's a couple of reasons why he's looking like this, but this is actually a pretty good thing to begin with, because it illustrates what each addition of each task does. So as you can see, he's eventually going to stretch out and try to accomplish somewhat more natural look eventually. It's going to take some time because we only have tasks on the feet. So what we should usually do, I don't know why this does this translation. Yeah, it's complaining about something with the root. So that's okay. So what we need to do is to go into the rig and make sure to add a task for the pelvis. And there's a preset for this. So it's called the hip task. So for now, we just add this and just ignore all the settings here. I'm going to come back to a little bit on to what each of these do. And hang on a sec. Seem to have some kind of barking away windows. Okay, weird. So with the hip task added, he's a little bit more straight up now, as you can see. He's not falling down like he did before. But you will notice the knees are acting really weird. When he stands still, things look pretty good. Almost. But that's where the knee tasks come in. You actually need to add a knee task to the rig as well. So the knee task is added to the calf. So you add a knee task like this to one calf and also one to the other one. So that's gonna give us this setup here. Okay. So when walking up the ledge here again, you can see now the knees are not bending out to the sides, but the upper body is now acting a little bit weird. And this is the same when we're walking up the stairs. It's going to be looking a little bit weird. It's the same when we're running. So you will see him dodging back and forth a little bit, quite a bit. Also when running down. So in order to get rid of that, we can tweak on a number of settings. So what I have found to work pretty well was to take my pelvis, and we have a setting called Retargeting Game. And the retargeting gain is found on 3 levels. If you double click on the open area, you'll find on the IK definition, you will find the retargeting gain out here. This is the global. I think they internally refer to this as the global retargeting gain. And then on each joint, you will also find retargeting gain, and then underneath each joint as well, you will have a retargeting gain for each axis. So that means the retargeting gain, the higher the retargeting gain is set, the more it's going to follow your FK, your normal animation sort of, and the lower it's going to be, the more it's going to ignore the FK animation. So if you set if you on the global level set this to 0, you're gonna get something looking like this. The hands are actually not animating at all, and the only reason we have something happening with the feet is because we have some gains set on the feet and the hips as well. So right now you could say that the animation is kind of driven by mostly by the or the rest of the movement is driven by the feet. Okay, so let's set that back to 0 to 1 again. So anyway, in order to get rid of the tilting in the upper body, we can change this retargeting gain up to like 15, for example. This value can go higher than 1. So if we do that and walk up again, you see it's looking a little bit more like the normal walking or running animation. And again, since the regular animation looks a little bit awkward with a hitch in it, the animation here is also going to have that hitch. That's not something IKinema can fix for you. So you need to be sure you have some good animation to begin with. But it's going to create a really good running, since the running is pretty good here. So it's going to enable your characters to run pretty smoothly up stairs and also on ledges. So this is basically the setup you can start out with. Let's see, I promised to talk a little bit about the offsets. As you can see here, the feet are sticking a little bit into the ground. So in order to adjust that a little bit, we can do a few things. We can take our mesh and we can, for example, pull that up a little bit, I think. Actually not that. That's not going to work since the IK is taking care of the positioning right now. So in order to get your feet to the correct location, if you click the IKinema foot placement node and scroll down to the mesh offset, which I hit as a pin. It has these 4 zeros. We can type in like 3 centimeters. It's gonna raise the feet 3 centimeters. So now, as we can see, the feet are being raised a little bit, so they look more like they are more better planted on the ground. Okay, so this should cover the super basic setup of just the regular foot placement. Next video I'm going to talk a little bit more about what else we can do with this, and eventually get into some of the more advanced stuff and parameters we can tweak. So I hope this was useful, and yeah, thank you for watching. Bye bye.